And welcome to the Outsiders UFC 253 is a wrap from Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. Jeff Sherwood. We know the results of two championship fights. Israel Adesanya defends his title against Paulo Costa. Really emphatic performance, tremendous from him. And there is, as well, we knew was coming, a new light heavyweight champion. It's Jan Blachowicz. A big victory for him and for Poland, and we'll get into all that. UFC 253, Jeff, is a wrap. How are you doing? You watched the fights tonight. What'd you think about the card?
The fights were good. I mean, a lot of the fights, and to be honest, I really, going into the fight, I really only cared about the co-main event and the main event. I mean, I knew there was going to be some other good fights, and there was, but yeah, I mean, it was building up to the co-main event and the main event, and both those fights definitely lived up to it. People are paying $65.99 or something like that to watch these cards now. That's a lot of money. You got to be entertained for that.
Let's talk about whether it lived up, because I feel like as great as that finish was in performance by Israel Adesanya, Paulo Costa did not live up to what the expectations were coming into this fight. Is it a question of, is he that good? Are we looking at someone who is transcendent in Israel Adesanya, or did Paulo Costa no-show and make it an easy night? What did we see here?
Is he that good? I like that.
You like that? That's a good headline. People can steal that headline if they want.
Yeah.
Because that's yeah.
As he called it, clickbait, right?
That's not clickbait. That's genius. Someone should hire me, Jeff. This is brilliant.
Yeah, I agree with that part. Somebody should hire you. But
I'll take it.
No, I really think he is that good. I mean, I thought that's how the fight was going to go. But I thought maybe the filling out process was going to go another round, and then he was really going to open up in the fourth and fifth round and just kind of dominate. It was building up to that. You saw the legs, the front leg of Costa. I mean, that there was just a matter of time. He was taking it, acting like it didn't hurt, but that definitely hurt. I just think that Costa couldn't really he couldn't really get in. He couldn't really do anything. Izzy was too good. I mean, he kept him away. He was in and out like so fast that Costa, he hits hard, but he's got to hit you. And if he can't hit you, what's he gonna do? Right. He's gonna do exactly what he did. Stand there and act like nothing hurt him.
He didn't box a lot, which was the interesting thing, and he was stuck outside at a range that totally favored Adesanya's length. I thought Costa's lack of a game plan or execution, unless he was hurt really early and just felt like he couldn't move, was astounding. I expected him to mix things up, try to wrestle a little bit more, use his physicality early. He didn't do anything. In fact, I think you have to credit Adesanya for taking out his legs the way he did. It was super effective. Everybody's got to know this is coming, right? The calf kick and the low thigh kick is coming. This is just a factor of it's as commonplace as a jab now, and as effective for a lot of reasons. But Costa had no answer for it, and they're gonna have to figure this out. If you're fighting Israel Adesanya, you can't do that and not have an answer. You can't not inflict damage. It didn't seem like to me, Jeff, and I was surprised by this the most, I guess, about Costa, is that he wasn't ready, and he didn't show the desire to walk through fire to get there. He just didn't. It seemed like he was resigned to not being able to figure it out. He looked confused most of the time to me.
Yeah, I mean, usually he's an in-your-face type guy, but when you're able to kick, and that kind of keeps you back. He did seem a little confused. He did seem like he couldn't figure it out. But I mean, those kicks are so quick. Is he so quick with those kicks? I mean, by the time the guys are even reacting, his foot's already back down on the ground from kicking you. And same with when he comes in and out. He comes in, he throws some stuff, and then he's out so quick. I mean, I think these guys don't really realize how fast he is until they get in there with him.
That's the thing, is the speed factor with Adesanya and the length, and you combine those two things, and then you talk about real problems. I mean, that was something that Anderson Silva had over a lot of opponents that he faced, Jeff. And Adesanya, in a lot of ways, is a more technical, tactical, and in some ways inspired striker, and you're saying like more than Anderson Silva, that seems crazy, but Adesanya always seems to have a measure of control. Silva always seemed to have a measure of that shoot box violence. And we haven't seen that quite from Adesanya. You know, he's not quite that kind of pressure fighter, but when the moment comes, he does not miss. He does not miss. What is there for him? Who's out there? He talked about Jared Cannonier. That's a fight I love, but he's got to take care of business against Robert Whittaker. I think that he's probably not so excited to fight Whittaker again. But the Cannonier fight, if he's flowing, he's physical enough. But I don't know. Adesanya seems like next level now, so I'm not sure that anybody's got his number.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a little while for these guys to catch up. Yeah. That's the way I feel. And you're right with the violence from Anderson Silva. You know, when he was in his prime there was nobody that could match him. And I feel Izzy's the same way, except what he's lacking, what you said, what he's lacking, what Anderson Silva had, I think that may be the gap where the fans aren't gravitating towards him. I don't know what it is. I mean,
he's popular and he's got his own. He's much more dynamic a personality than Anderson Silva.
Of course,
he connects with people in a lot of different ways. I think you're wrong about that. I think in the way that we didn't see Anderson resonate in Brazil, like he's a gigantic star, social media presence in Brazil. Maybe that didn't translate in the U.S. I feel like that's the same way in some respects with Adesanya in New Zealand, Australia, that part of the world, connecting with different people. I don't think you can forget his Nigerian roots. There are billboards of his face in all over the country, and this is becoming a commonplace thing now. So that's hard to measure, but he's unique and special. I think there's no doubt that he's the best middleweight in the world. Who's the best light heavyweight in the world now, Jeff? Because that's the question that we're going to be asking a lot in the wake
John
of
Jones.
Well, yeah. But
and Jan knows it. I mean,
he's going to eat and work out and not cut weight. So
that's what he's been doing.
That's what he's
been doing, right?
Right. There's no 5.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's because that's what John Jones has been doing. He's been bulking up. He's been getting ready for this. And I'm not saying that he couldn't come back down to 205, but I think he's been, bulking up a little bit and kind of living a little bit. So. But I mean,
I don't know what he's kind of living a little bit. I don't know what that means in the John Jones context, Jeff.
Right. That's a good point. But I mean, for Jan to call him out, I mean, that tells you who he thinks is the best 205-pound fighter in the world.
Well, everybody knows that if John Jones is campaigning at 205, he's the best, but he's not. So it's an open question. And Jan Blachowicz says, no, it's not Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes could have taken this fight, blown through Jan, and people are like, you know what? That guy's number one. I think he beat Jones anyways. And then that sort of question doesn't exist. But it does exist now in a big way. Yes, Jan beat Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson beat him early in his career. There are fighters that interchange between different promotions, UFC and Bellator, that make the question open. It's something we've talked about a lot. But for tonight, Jan Blachowicz is the UFC light heavyweight champion. He adds his name to an incredible list of fighters. And he's now a huge star in Poland in probably ways you and I didn't realize. But now the UFC, has, and we've seen it with JJ in Poland. Mixed martial arts is a big deal with KSW.
Right.
I think a lot of people, the expectation was that, UFC wants Dominic Reyes to win. He's the obvious guy you can market. And then if Jan wins, he's like maybe not the number one guy. But I don't know. The UFC gets themselves a fighter that they can promote. And he also is engaging. He's got a fun personality. The guy is hilarious. So the fight itself, Jeff, was this, from my eyes, it was Jan being super sharp. He was on point. He was ready to fight. Dominic Reyes a little bit off, not quite there. But even if he was at his best, I think Jan Blachowicz had it in him to win the fight as emphatically a way as he did at 205. How do you see him in his performance this evening?
Yeah, he looks sharp. I mean, I wonder about the kicks to Reyes' side. He didn't really show it that it really hurt him, but man, how they bruised up immediately. I think he actually only kicked him there like 3 times.
It was like video game damage. It was
it was crazy. And that's gotta hurt. I mean, if not break a rib. Yeah. I mean, who knows? Who knows what real effect those had on him. I'm sure that we'll hear about it, in time to come. But you're right. Jan looked on point. I mean, that's what a fighter goes into a fight looking for: a good camp, stay healthy, eat right, get the road work in, and actually show up on point. All of that is so hard to do, because you'll see guys get 2 out of the 3, 3 out of the 4. Very rarely do you see, and we don't know what Jan's cardio was like if it would have went 5 rounds, but at this particular point, he seemed like he was on all points. All cylinders were firing.
He was aware and focused, and I think
he calm.
I think he felt early, like in the way Reyes approached him, like there wasn't a lot of threat, and he analyzed that pretty quickly and figured it out. And as soon as he damaged Reyes the ribs, it was impressive, and he's a guy that I think deserves the credit, like you said right off the top. He maybe hasn't got it. Absolutely deserves it, and he's gonna figure out really quickly whether he really deserves it, because this is a great weight class in the UFC. Tons of talent, tons of big, dangerous, violent fighters. I think there's you look at that list of guys. I think there are a lot of opponents for Jan, and we'll see how that shakes out. But again, and I think it's healthy, and I think it's a good thing for people to start discussing the idea that even if he goes on a tear, there's no guarantee that he's the best, because Vadim Nemkov is excellent. Ryan Bader is excellent. Phil Davis is excellent. There are reasons to feel like, and obviously Corey Anderson, yes, Jan beat him in the second to last fight, but they're 1-1.
Right.
So, there's this discussion to be had. What happens with Reyes, Jeff? Is he, because you talk about all this sort of depth at 205, is it luck of the draw? Because, he could have won that decision against John Jones, and his life is different. He doesn't get it, then he loses this fight. It's hard to get back to that spot again. Is he a guy that will get there?
We never know. We always wonder about, when somebody loses a fight. Coming off the John Jones fight, it wasn't in his mind. I'm sure it wasn't like a defeat. This is a defeat. And you always wonder how a fighter bounces back, and that's the thing that you can't teach somebody. It's they have it inside of them. It's that heart and drive. Some fighters kind of lose big fights, and they just kind of go away and become middle of the pack the rest of their career. So we'll have to wait and see. He's got to go back to the drawing board. He's got to get some wins and see how it is. I mean, Jan's no spring chicken, unless you're comparing him to Randy Couture. But
yeah. Didn't it seem like to you, and it was the first time I felt this about Reyes, that he didn't look strong enough. Jan's a pretty big, strong guy. Reyes looked a little soft to me, and it was weird. I hadn't seen him like that. He didn't look that way against Jones. So, I don't think it was his best, but man, he picked the wrong night not to be his best. And he showed up against Jones in a way that made us feel like, of course, Dominic Reyes is going to show up, right? Mm-hmm. Like, of course, he look what he did to Jones, and it just didn't happen. It's just such a fleeting, crazy sport.
It's just like I said, you try and line all those things up, and sometimes you show up and you don't have all those pistons firing, and that's why it's great to see guys that can put it all together and get in there like that. And that's why I think a lot of us and a lot of people, casual fans and things like that, don't really understand how, we go to work every day, right? So, and we have bad days all the time. These guys go to work, they work every day, but their main job is that night. And you don't show up that night, something goes wrong, something you just don't feel right. We hear all these stories about guys, that get sick 2 days before the fight or 3 days before the fight. And, that's going to hold them back. Not saying that that's what happens. That's what happened. But, you never know. He just didn't put it all together. And that's what it takes to become a champion.
Yeah. And in mixed martial arts, I think there's always a 50-50 chance you're going to have a bad night at work. It's like kind of like that black and white in this sport. And, sometimes things really go against you, and sometimes everything seems to go great and you get your head knocked off. It's a tough one. The rest of the card, the pay-per-view card, entertaining, some good bouts, interesting outcomes, interesting sort of moments. 205 is a weight class that still kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Where is it? It's unclear, but there is talent there, and Brandon Royval put on a hell of a fight in winning that contest. I actually thought that this was the best fight of the night, and I'm not sure what the rewards were or whatever. Did you agree with that? Was this the best fight of the night to you? That first round was fight of the year contender.
Yeah, that after that first round, I was like, "Holy crap!" Right. And then they talked about bonuses and things like that before that fight started, and I was like, "Damn, I'll just give both these guys the fight of the night bonus right there after round one." I mean, it was crazy. It was a crazy fight. It was action packed from the first second of the fight until the end of the fight. It was great. I mean, we almost saw we saw both guys go down. I mean, you remember the video flying around. I think it was the King of the Cage fight that, things like that only happen in movies, but both fighters knocked each other out. I thought we almost saw a moment like that. Both guys were on the canvas at the same time. That's just crazy.
Yeah, big punch and then spinning elbow. That was just a wild sequence. It was so much happened in half a second. I saw Ben Rothwell tweets I blinked, I missed everything. There was 4,000 things happened in a blink of an eye. That was a wild fight, and I think as we, the people who think about these things sort of end of the year, that's definitely a round of the year contender, and may end up being a fight of the year contender for Royval. It's a big win. At 125, he's got to be right in the picture, and LFA champ and won 3 in a row, 2 in the UFC, and he looks big and dangerous and physical, and Kai Kamaru France, that was he put on a really Kai Kara France, excuse me, put on a really impressive showing.
He looked great until the end of the fight.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't like he was out of the fight at any time. I mean, he was right there firing back. He was, it wasn't one-sided. That's what made the fight so great. It was both guys, and that's what, to me, that's what a fight of the night is, when it's back and forth. That's what makes it exciting.
That's always a good recipe, and I think why I felt the way I did, especially about the main event, because it just wasn't one guy just didn't show.
One-sided.
Yeah, definitely. Ketlin Vieira here wins a decision against Sajara Eubanks. What would you make of this one? Have any thoughts?
She dominated the fight. I mean, it didn't look like she was in any danger pretty much the whole entire fight. Just like you said, kind of a one-sided fight. I did like Sarge's corner when he basically was straight up with her, and we don't always see that. He said, "You're down 2 rounds."
Right. Yeah. Very clear.
You need to go.
Very clear. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it was good. It wasn't. I'll talk a little bit towards the end of some of the cornering. The cornering in the Diego Sanchez fight was wild. It had nothing to do with Josh Fabia. Stephan Bonner's corner work was quite interesting. The opening card of the pay-per-view portion. Interesting, sort of strange fight. The split decision here goes to Hakeem Dawodu. What did you make of the score of the fight? How'd you have it?
I was kind of just getting into it. First fight, and I thought that it was going to go the other way, to be honest with you. I didn't look around. I didn't look around on Twitter or anything to see what everyone else thought, but my original reaction in my mind was that they went the wrong way. But the first 2 rounds were very close. And the third round was easy to pick. So, I was the other way at first, but I don't know. What did you think about it? I thought they got it wrong.
Yeah, 29-28 either way. I think some of those rounds were tight.
Round 1 and 2.
Yeah, they were. It wasn't like Tukagov was doing a ton of work. So I could see it. The 30-27 Dawodu I thought was a little bit off.
That was crazy. That Yeah, that seemed definitely crazy to me. I know that there was a lot of I saw some 10-10s for round one. I mean, that's how close it was. But
yeah, a draw would have felt right in that fight. I wouldn't have minded that. I actually thought that Tukagov probably, if I'm remembering the fight correctly, or it may have been an earlier fight. It was it was the opening fight of the night where the guy was grabbing the fence. I got my Russians confused.
How dare you?
Oh yeah, it's so sorry.
But that was the fight where it was the referee scolding them, right?
Okay, so you're reading my mind here. You're reading my mind. So the referee was scolding them, but for cussing, right? So
I thought that was Hav, though.
What's that?
Does anyone really know that it was the referee? Because when you heard them say that, the referee wasn't in the shot. It sounded to me like Hav.
No, I'm pretty sure it was the referee.
Crazy. I thought it was Hav, and that made sense to me because it seems like that would be something the Javier would say, like, hey, let's keep it classy, and I thought he was talking directly to his fighter, like no cussing or whatever. But if it was the referee, that's ridiculous. I mean,
here's the thing though, there are rules about conduct in terms of like verbally engaging your opponent and like things you can and can't do. So I actually want to hear from officials on this, but you can award a fighter for language, and does that seem ridiculous to you? Should that be like free for all?
It's a fight.
It's a fight. So, but it's not a professional sporting contest. It's a fight where you can just say, fuck you, motherfucker, and like come and sock his face in. That's what you want, right?
Is it like that in any other sport? I mean, you hear every time the referee.
You don't think there's tons of cussing on the football field or like
there is? That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I mean, we heard. I was watching the Dodger game, a month ago or so, and Jock Peterson was just F-bombing like crazy, and with no fans in the stadium, you can hear him totally clearly. And the umpire didn't turn around and was like, "Hey, watch your mouth. I'm going to wash it out with soap."
I'm for manners. I need manners. Like mixed martial arts is already wild enough and crazy enough. We don't need the fighters now sort of getting into patterns where they're swearing at each other. Nah, it's too aggressive. That's angry.
What happened. That's what happens in the street, Josh.
This is not street fighting. It's not. Your shirt is NHB. Those days are long. Even NHB wasn't street fighting, Jeff.
Full contact fighter, NHB.
Yeah. Peace out to Joel Gold. And yes, Eddie Gold.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind it. But I think most of the refs. Now, I can't say most of the refs. Some of the refs do such a bad job. I think they just need to concentrate on reffing the fight and not worrying about what the fighters are saying.
Yeah, the reffing's wild, but we're starting to see different fighters work. Different referees work with different fighters. Some we may not be used to, and I thought Jason Herzog did a nice job in the main event. Nice to see him.
He always does a good job.
Yeah,
he's one of the guys. I think nobody ever really talks about Jason unless he has a hiccup.
Right.
Everybody's
for most officials, though, right?
No. I mean, you always hear people say, "Oh, Herb Dean, Big John McCarthy, two of the best refs ever." Like you'd never hear Jason Herzog, and everyone in that position is going to have a hiccup once in a while. I understand that. I expect it. I watch other sports, so I know. And Herzog is definitely one of the best referees going right now.
Yeah,
hands down.
Jeff, I just want to say on the cussing thing, I do think there's a difference between players cussing on a football field. A lot of times they're swearing just to swear. They're swearing at teammates. They're like, in the middle of a fight where you're directing like F-bombs at someone like that. I do think there's a difference competitively, just in terms of like society and culture. This is my 2 cents on that. So anything on the undercard stand out to you? I had mentioned cornering. And it wasn't quite cussing or no cussing, but Stephan Bonner was wild in Diego Sanchez's corner. Diego Sanchez, I think, looked he fought Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews said he was 11 when Diego Sanchez won the Ultimate Fighter 1.
Right.
So, this is what we're talking about now. Diego looked about as bad physically as I've seen him in a fight, just like older, out of shape, like a regular dad bod, that kind of thing happening.
Had a little belly. I mean, I can't really talk about bellies and say Diego Sanchez has a belly when I have mine, but yeah, I thought the same thing. I mean, how long have we watched Diego Sanchez fight? I mean, we used to watch him down at King of the Cage.
King of the Cage.
Every King of the Cage.
First time I saw him. So yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a monster. That kid was a catch wrestler, a monster, nonstop cardio, aggressive. He was kill, kill, kill. That version of Diego Sanchez would have been a nightmare for this one. Sorry for the terrible pun, but he would have kicked the shit out of this Diego Sanchez, 1,000%. And so I don't know what we're doing. It's hard to really say what we're doing.
What's weird is Dana comments about that sometimes. Like, we saw that back and forth tweet between Conor McGregor and Dana White. If that was all real, Conor wanted to fight Diego. I have no idea why the hell.
Did Conor McGregor be embarrassed now that he did that?
Even if he should, it doesn't matter because Conor McGregor will never be embarrassed about anything that he says or does. But I mean, I didn't even understand why he's talking about fighting Diego Sanchez when I was reading that stuff. But yeah, crazy. But Dana kind of goes back and forth. There's certain times with certain fighters. I mean, last week he just said that I believe it was him that said he might have to have that talk with Cowboy. Like, if you're going to have that talk with somebody like Cowboy, I think, Diego Sanchez is going to be sitting outside of his office and he's going to be the next one to be called in. And I'm not the guy that ever says I think anyone should retire because I don't feel that's my place. If these guys want to keep doing it and, so be it. I'm not going to be the guy that says, oh, that he looked horrible. Diego Sanchez looked horrible. He needs to retire. I'm not going to say that, but the only thing that when I see fighters like that, I feel sorry for their families. I feel like the medical issues that are going to come of this, that kind of makes me feel bad, but they're free to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, Diego got beat up pretty good in this fight. Jake Matthews took it to him. The rest of the card, I don't think anything really in particular jumped out. Some decent MMA, some back and forth contests, some good rounds. But really, I feel like we sort of lined up the three big fights that sort of we were thinking about through the rest of the year. This was not the best of the bunch. I think we saved best for last with Khabib Nurmagomedov and Justin Gaethje next month. That's the next UFC pay-per-view. To me, that's the biggest fight in the sport. Maybe that's just how it feels. I mean, Khabib is that big, and then Justin Gaethje is just a murderer. But as it stands, Jeff, Israel Adesanya, is he that good? Is he that good?
I think so. I think he is that good. He brings that style that's hard to beat. My mom came in and sat down right at the beginning of that main event fight, and she saw Costa and she saw Izzy, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that guy's gonna kill him. He looks double his size." Which is kind of funny because she's been watching this forever as well. And I would have thought that she would have at least learned that, big muscles and being bigger doesn't necessarily mean anything inside of the octagon or any other cage or ring. But she thought that. And I didn't get what Izzy was complaining about. He was complaining about Costa's weight cut?
No, he was talking about, I think, a weight cut from earlier on the card. Shane Young was fighting Ludovic Klein. I'm not quite sure how to say his first name. Klein, the guy landed a really sweet knockout, a beautiful combination. It was a gorgeous knockout, but he missed weight. He was at 150. He was 5 pounds over. And so Adesanya's teammate was Shane Young. He was complaining about that. I agree 100% with one of the things I like most about Israel Adesanya, sort of that he's in mixed martial arts and what he's bringing to the sport, is that he has like a bullshit factor of 0. Like he does not play bullshit, and he sees it and he calls it out and he says exactly what he thinks. Doesn't mean he's correct all the time. Obviously, very few people are, if anyone ever, but I love his perspective. And so he was aggressive in terms of talking about the punishment for missing weight. He was talking about a big monetary fine. Okay. I'm all for that, Jeff. I think the 30%, whatever, you can still calculate as a fighter. Is it worth it? Am I still making enough? Is the win, the advantage that big? You got to take a point away before the start of the fight. Round 1 starts 9-9. You know, so it's like you take a point away. And I think that would go a long way in really, really getting people's mind right on how much they're willing to cut and the cost of it and the benefit of it, because it's not penal enough. It's not.
Right. Especially, I mean, we saw that stat. There has been a few since then that have won that weren't the ones that were overweight, but for a long time, like every fighter that missed weight was coming in and winning. And my biggest thing is, how much did they try?
Right.
Because me as the opponent, I'm just using this for example because I've never cut weight in my life. But if I, go through that hard cut, those last 3 pounds, and my opponent doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to tax his body like that. That's a huge advantage. That's such a big advantage. That's worth way more than 30%. I totally agree with Izzy on that one. He is right this time, Josh.
I'm sure he's happy to know that you agree with him. Because that's what matters. We are done for this recap of UFC 253. Jeff Sherwood. Overall, another UFC pay-per-view. Some people were trying to draw up comparisons about this is maybe the biggest, the best middleweight title fight in UFC history in terms of the talent in the cage or the stakes. I thought that was unfair. And Israel Adesanya was a class above Paulo Costa. And what he needs is someone to match him. He needs someone who can bring him out the best in Israel Adesanya so he's not showboating and doing it on his own. He needs someone to really, really bring it to him. We'll see.
You know what he needs?
What's that?
He needs a Chael Sonnen.
No, he needs someone good, Jeff. He needs someone who can beat him.
Chael Sonnen made Anderson Silva.
No, Israel doesn't need someone to make him. He doesn't need that. He needs someone.
That's what we thought about Anderson Silva. That's what we thought about Anderson Silva. But remember, we talked about on the last podcast how, we bring our expectations and everyone's talking about greatest ever. Obviously, the fight didn't even come close to living up to that. But when we do things like that, we're always let down.
They are, Jeff.
So be careful. Be careful for Khabib Gaethje.
No, I'm not careful. That's going to be the best fight of the fucking year. I'm not careful at all. 1,000% not careful for that. I'm committed, locked and loaded, and let's get there. I mean, 2020 has been such a bastard. Who the hell knows what's going to happen? But I think it's almost the week before the election, a little bit more. So it'll be a crazy day. Let's see where people's heads are at, if they can focus on a night of fights right before the U.S. presidential election, Jeff. We'll see what happens.
I'm sure it'll be just fine.
All right, I hope you're right. For Jeff Sherwood, I am Josh Gross. You've been watching The Outsiders. Thank you very much.